I want to welcome you back to Enemy of My Truth. And in today's episode, we're going on to part 2 of The Intuitive Therapist. And I want to talk about how this journey has been a core part of my own healing. Therapy has helped me build the foundation, has given me the tools to process, to unpack, to reframe what I didn't yet have words for. It grounded me in ways that was necessary and life-changing. Alongside all of that, though, there was always something whispering underneath, a quiet inner knowing that couldn't be measured or explained, but was undeniably real. That voice, that was my intuition. And when I finally started listening to it, not as a contradiction to therapy, but as a companion to it, that's when things begin to shift for me on a much deeper level. We live in a world that often pressures us to choose sides, science or spirit, structure or soul. But what if healing isn't linear? What if it's layered, personal, and constantly evolving? What if truly creating a healing space means giving ourselves and others permission to bring all the parts of who we are to the table, even the ones that don't fit neatly into a diagnosis but carry deep wisdom nonetheless? I believe that's the direction we're being called towards collectively, to normalize the conversation around emotional health and intuitive knowing in the same breath, to allow someone to say, I go to therapy and I trust my gut, and have that be not just valid, but celebrated. Today, I want to explore that idea from a different angle, from the perspective of therapist. What happens when a clinical practitioner begins to sense their own intuitive voice rising up in their sessions? How do they navigate that space between evidence-based practice and the subtle energetic clues that intuition brings? We're going to hear from therapists who are asking these very questions, who are exploring what it looks like to hold space ethically while also honoring the deeper knowing that guides them. It's a conversation about integration, about permission, and about redefining what it truly means to support healing in others. And before we dive in, please note, this episode is not intended to be a substitute for professional mental health or medical care. If you're in need of support, we strongly encourage you to reach out to a licensed provider in your area. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad. Let's dive in. I want to welcome my first guest, Michael. Michael, share with the audience a little bit about who you are and the type of clinical work that you do.
Thank you, Ann. My name is Michael Candle, and I'm a licensed psychologist in Durham, New Hampshire. And I've been practicing as a licensed psychologist for 34 years now. And in recent years, I've had, or I should say, it's even more recent than that. In the past year, I've had a spiritual awakening that was quite unexpected, but delightful. And this coincided with the first time I contacted you, Anne, because now I had this new dimension of awareness that I wasn't quite certain where to go with, what to do with. But it has changed the way that I work. And essentially what that means is that it has allowed me to bring my newfound sense of spirituality and that awareness into the healing work that I do with my clients. And I have found tremendous benefit from adding that spiritual element and that spiritual guidance, which may be as close as I can get to my understanding of intuition, because it's an influence of being led from some higher plane beyond my own rational conscious mind. And so it's been a powerful supplement and complement to the healing work that I've been doing for the past 34 years. But as like many psychologists and other psychotherapists, there's been a lot of taboo, resistance, and avoidance to talking about and incorporating spirituality into our work. It's been taboo and suspect in many ways, sadly. So many therapists, many conventionally trained therapists, avoid spirituality altogether. Others will practice it in some form of secrecy. And then there are a few who are bold enough to just announce it and advertise it and fly that flag. I'm not quite there yet, but that is where I'm wanting to go. And your offering of this group, this gathering of like-minded, kindred spirits, therapists wanting to expand the range of their tools to include intuition, spirituality, alternative healing modalities, is serving my need very well. I'm not feeling alone in the desert, and just hearing that other people are thinking the same way and doing similar things is very reinforcing and affirming and reassuring. And so it's helping me to come out of this closet with less anxiety and apprehension.
Michael, thank you for just sharing a bit about where you've been and traveled and where you are today with this. And I want to go back and ask you something a little bit deeper about that spiritual awakening for you. What was happening for you or coming up when you experienced that seemed to be the catalyst of this shift for you of seeking more?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking me that question. That's a very personal one that I'm happy to share. It's a little on the woo-woo side, but I'm getting more comfortable sharing my woo-woo thoughts and experiences with you folks. So it's a long story that evolved over about 34 years, but I've got the cliff notes prepared to try to lay it out. Because it actually began about 34 years ago with a personal crisis I was going through and could not find any conventional therapy that was hitting the mark for me. And then a close friend of mine told me about an amazing psychic that had done wonders for her. And so I said, all right, set up the meeting with a psychic, see where that goes. And this woman was tremendous. She read me like an open book, and she pointed me in two life-changing directions, one of which was a form of alternative healing therapy. It was a hypnotherapy working with my inner family, of subpersonalities, the inner child, the inner judge, the inner rebel, the inner warrior, all these different parts of my character, just like you see in the Inside Out movies. This family of characters is so chaotic and confused and conflicted, but eventually find their way to greater unity and harmony. So this was a therapeutic modality that introduced me to a new paradigm of self-healing. So that was the first direction that this psychic pointed me toward. The second direction she pointed me toward was a California-based art therapist who, back in the 1970s, coined the term inner child and then wrote books on how to heal and recover the inner child. And that was coinciding with a new movement of inner child reparenting and all that good stuff. But this woman, whose name was Lucia Capacchione, provided something even more of greater profound value than that. And it was a method of two-handed writing, quite pioneering, quite revolutionary, where the use of dialogues between our two hands in a journaling format gave direct access to our hearts and our subpersonalities and our subconscious mind. And so all this healing therapy I'd done in hypnotherapy with a great therapist, I then learned to do for myself. And that was so transformative for me personally and for the work I did with my clients. So for the past 34 years, I've been teaching my clients how to self-heal using this method, using this model. So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Great for me, great for my clients, great for my practice. After 33 years of doing this, so now coming back to about a year ago, this Lucia Capicchione woman who I'd never met, but who had been my inspiration, and she did collaborate with me. She was willing to read my first book and edit it and endorse it. And so I was delighted and really affirmed by that. But a year after she did that, she died. And before I was ready to lose her, because I needed her help one more time. And when I reached out for that help, I discovered that she died like a few months earlier. And this was in November of 2023. So shortly after that, I was doing my own two-handed journaling. And in the midst of that, her face appeared to me, just unbidden. And with her beautiful, benevolent smile and loving eyes, and immediately I felt this glow of warmth and affirmation and encouragement and inspiration that was terrific. Shortly after that, I'd keep inviting her presence, her image, to join me for that boost. But then I decided to see if I could communicate with her spirit. And so I wrote her a letter and then asked her if we could talk. And she responded right away. And so this was the birth of my first angel that I felt I had, this disembodied soul or spirit who was so loving and benevolent and there to understand me and communicate with me and support me and affirm me, all this great stuff.
Had you,
and
Bill, I don't mean to interrupt, but had you ever seen spirit or had that happen to you before when you saw her image? Had that ever happened?
What happened to me seeing her image?
No, like had that ever happened to you before? Was that the first time that you had an image of a spirit of someone passed?
Yeah. Yes. Brand new, unexpected, delightful. And so when I eventually decided to write her letter and express all my appreciation to her, I asked if we could talk. She responded through my non-dominant hand, the way her method taught. And she said, yes, of course. What would you like to talk about? And so that began a dialogue with my angel that triggered this reawakening of my own spirituality that was dormant for roughly 40 years when I abandoned God for all these disappointments back as a teenager. And as a result of these dialogues with Lucia, she introduced me to the divine in a way that was unfamiliar to me and felt absolutely right. So for 33 years, I've been using two-handed writing as a channel into the depths of our subconscious minds and our hearts and souls for the purpose of healing. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But last year when this happened, and I was communicating with my Lucia angel, that opened up a new door, a higher door, a transpersonal door, a transcendent door to the divine. And once that door opened, that led to another stage of evolution in the healing work I've been doing with my clients, so that I could then teach them how to open their portals to divine spiritual unconditional love and to use that themselves to facilitate their own healing. So that is the Cliff Notes version I can give you for an evolution that took place over 34 years.
That's incredible. And hearing the whole process and how it seems as though your higher self and spirit and the energy around you has been trying to get your attention for a while. And this energy, Lucia, um, and through the course of your channeling, and however we want to say this, through mediumship, channeling, and connecting, as though that she is here to guide you to not only this extraordinary healing that you're helping others with, but really what it sounds like is your transformation of healing. And as you're doing that, Michael, you are attracting those clients that are needing that same degree of healing or interest or curiosity in the work that you're doing. And that leads me to asking you about the writing that you do, and I want to have you share with the audience a bit of what that looks like, and let us know a little bit about what your books are all about.
Okay, thank you again. I'll try to describe these two elements, what my books are about, and the two-handed writing process. First of all, everything that I've written, and I've written 3 books and a bunch of shorter blog articles over the past 8 or 10 years, and they are all about self-healing. Because not only was I able to learn about the healing process through my own therapy and working with my own inner family, but then with the addition of the two-handed writing dialogue method from Lucia Capicchione, I discovered that I could continue my own healing process independently. And so I use this tool, these loving dialogues with my different subpersonalities, to liberate myself from shame or guilt or self-judgment, and replace those toxic influences with empathy and understanding and compassion and acceptance and affirmation. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Using this method. And so that's what I'm teaching all my clients to do, likewise, to self-heal. The method of two-handed writing is so bizarre, so unconventional, so weird. And when I introduce it to my clients, they kind of tighten up and cringe. It's awfully woo-woo. They don't think they can write with their non-dominant hands. But it is so remarkably easy and effective and quick. And I've never come across a more effective therapeutic tool than two-handed writing. And I learned all about it just from reading 2 of Lucia Capicchione's books, written back in the early 90s. It's a very easy thing to pick up. I've been doing it ever since. What it does is connect the right hemisphere of the brain with the left hemisphere of the brain. And in our right hemispheres, we've got all kinds of information and channels of awareness that we do not ordinarily access. We are very trained and conditioned to live our lives through our rational left brains. But when the 2 brains talk to one another, these channels open very quickly, very easily. There's new insight, new information, epiphanies, awarenesses, collaborations, and a circulation of love throughout us and our inner families and our hearts and our souls, and even now connecting with divine love, that is just so powerful and valuable for our psycho-spiritual health and healing.
Well, it sounds like an incredible tool, Michael, to use, and it's really like what I'm hearing from you is it's this sense of access you have for you to see yourself, and maybe it's the term of the ego versus the higher self, and talking to one another, and how that can balance our perspectives, and it can change the way that we step into life, but it gives you a safe space to use your hands and using them as a tool to channel, but to go deeper within yourself and digging into the subconscious. And what an interesting process. Now, could you share the books from Lucia and then let the audience know a bit about your two publications and how they can, find those?
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually creating a new website to put all this material on. The website's going to be called Free Self Healing, because not only do I want to share my works on the self healing process, but I want them to be available for free. So I'm working on that. So Lucia Cappuccione's book, she's written many books. The two that started me off were called The Power of Your Other Hand and then Recovery of Your Inner Child. And so that's what got me started on all of this. And then over 25 plus years of doing that myself, I felt ready to write my own version of this self-healing process using her method. And that book is called Whole Mind Healing. Yeah, if anybody's seen the Pixar movies, little Riley with all of these characters running around chaotically in her mind, the idea is doing internal family therapy to bring all those different characters together in a unified and harmonious and collaborative way. So that's what my first book provided a manual for, Whole Mind Healing. 200 pages, but it's pretty comprehensive. And it's all based in psychological principles and practices. My second book is called Handbook for Psychospiritual Healing. And this is the same process of self-healing, same model for that, same use of two-handed dialogues, but now with the inclusion of spirituality and the benefits of opening that channel to the divine. So, and that book is only 50 pages long and has some four powerful writing exercises in it that change the way our minds think and takes advantage of the brain's neuroplasticity to change how we think about ourselves, change the patterns of our emotions in directions that are much more healthy. And then I wrote a third book, which is really just allegorical, called Soulflake. And it describes the same kind of psychospiritual path to being healthy. And then there are a whole bunch of shorter subjects addressed. But I was going to say one more thing about the psychospiritual stuff. What I've found is that the sum of psychology integrated with spirituality is greater than the sum of those parts alone. The two added together are more powerful than the sum of them provided independently, if that makes any sense. And so these are the writings I'm wanting to post and make available for free so that people can heal themselves. There are not enough therapists available to meet the day's needs for self-healing. And so this is my effort to make a contribution to that.
I think that's incredible, Michael. And there's so much more we could go into and rabbit holes to go down, but you've given us a wonderful introduction into, what's brought you to this point in the clinical practice that you hold today in Durham, New Hampshire, and also opening up this whole other area of exploring aspects of just truly being able to heal and allowing people to have that self-healing and have a conversation around it and hold resources for that. So I want to thank you for sharing what you have today and offering that information to others. So how can people find you? How can we find you?
Well, if anybody wants to find me or my readings, my easiest place to go to for that is my website. And the address for that is dr, and then my last name, just like a candle with a K. So drcandle.com.
Wonderful. And are you currently seeing clients? People can reach out to your website if you work in the state of New Hampshire clinically?
Yeah, and or Maine or other states as well. I'm licensed to be able to provide teletherapy across state lines, so that expands the territory. I'm always accepting new clients. My caseload doubled during the pandemic because the demand was so great and there weren't enough therapists available. And what I discovered is I could see twice as many clients by seeing them less often. And for that to still be very, very effective, because what I'm teaching all these clients is how to be their own therapists. And so they could make do coming in every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then I'd help them with the next stage of that self healing, and then they'd be good to go. So that has allowed me to keep my practice open and doing healing work with twice as many people as I've ever done before.
That's incredible. And so you work out of the states of New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts?
Oh yeah, most states around the country, there are credentialing opportunities to meet to provide telehealth therapy across state lines, and it's been hugely advantageous.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Michael, so glad that you're here today. Thank you for sharing a bit about yourself and your journey and just being accessible and letting us know a bit about who you are. It means a lot. Thank you.
Well, it means a lot to me too. Thank you, Ian, on behalf of all of us for inviting us to do this. This is a very new and liberating and empowering opportunity for me to share the kinds of things I just shared here now, openly, freely, safely, because I've been in many other professional groups sharing, professional work, and in none of it, I've never felt free or able to say these types of things and receive anything other than polite recognition without any true appreciation for my woo-woo stuff.
Well, thank you, Michael. And I think that it's a conversation that needs to be had. I think that we have to open the doors to, finding connection in so many ways that we all are needing that, and perhaps creating that sense of, safe vulnerability to go there. And it's got to start somewhere, right? And I'm grateful that our paths have crossed, and the work we've been doing with the Intuitive Collective, with the Intuitive Therapist Collective, just means a whole lot. And everybody's sharing their part in how they got here. It's really important. So, Michael, thank you so much, and I'm so glad that you were able to be here today.
Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you, Michael. So, Paulette, I'm so glad you're here. Can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and the kind of work that you do?
Yes, thank you for the invitation. So much of what Michael talked about is very meaningful to me, and my path is long. It is long. I actually come from a family where spirituality was put before religion. And it gave me the feeling that there's bigger things here for me to understand. And so I really have to say that my mother and my grandmother were two people spiritually for me that guided me right from being a little girl exploring these kinds of thoughts out there. I started a practice early in the 80s, actually, in the Seacoast area here in Portsmouth. And actually was a co-founder of the first sexual support services that was put together in the state. That was at a time when trauma for patients, especially incest survivors, abuse, cult kinds of things going on, was just starting to break out in the news. And I took every single training that I could find to really have a better understanding of how to help people, because I was building a practice around people that were struggling so much to break out of all of the secrets, all of the lies, all of the politics, all of the things that had wounded them for so long. And the more I learned and the more I grew, I found that it was not only helpful for me to have spirituality brought into it, but I also had to not really talk about it in professional circles. So I understand what Michael was kind of saying about that. The woo stuff was a real turnoff for people, but I felt like it was so honest and deep in us that I wasn't going to abandon it. I was going to find a way to incorporate it. And there comes along in the way, probably you and I met probably, I don't know, about maybe say 15 years ago on our own path for taking classes for spirituality. And each time learning more, opening more, figuring out what to do with all of that. But I made a decision early on in the 90s that I was going to find a way to bring what I had learned clinically and what I knew to be true spiritually into one place for healing. And I could not agree more that healing yourself is a skill that we have not been taught, but should be. That people that have access to their intuition and their ability to leave the confines of what they've been taught to reach for more out there is more freeing than I even have words to describe. I started to also take training spiritually and shamanically. I am shamanically trained. And that's where I learned about journeying work, guided meditations, guided journeying, where somebody can release the part that allows them to travel just outside of where they are to anywhere else that they want to get information about healing themselves. And it's very profound work. When I was doing my trauma work for years and years, people like, Brian Weiss was a mentor to me. I went to all the trainings I could find of his because when he was regressing his trauma patients, they would very often go into past lives. And I understood what that was. And that freeing experience being guided by a therapist seemed so nurturing to me that I began to take that onto my practice and make it one of the centerpieces. The journeying work, the past life work, grief work, releasing an actual energy from the body that holds the wounds in place was very fascinating to me. And it really, each time it helped me to grow for myself because I also, like so many of the people I see, come from a very troubled family where there was a lot of things to overcome. And I found that merging with spirit was the thing that would bring me an understanding of what deep compassion was, healing, forgiveness in particular. I've done a lot of workshops around that, that letting go of those pieces actually elevates us up out of a place where we feel stuck. So it's been a long journey, more than 40 years, and I feel like I'm still growing with it. Um, the spirit work that I do, I now couple completely with my clinical training. And I should tell people that I also let my clinical licensing lapse because it felt like a conflict. And I had to be something that I didn't feel right about. That these are the constraints. If you stay in these groups, this is what you have to do. And I felt like people needed more and wanted more. And to see them be free of that, I've had clients for 40 years off and on that I have seen and watched grow into the people that they wanted to be all along because of the spiritual work that we do. So I'm very proud of that. And I feel very connected to it. And it feels like I'm finally who I was supposed to be. So I too have a coaching practice as part of my spiritual practice, and I certainly combine all of those things together. Um, Self healing is the most important healing that we can do, because until you walk in somebody else's shoes, do you ever know what they're really experiencing? And so, walking people through that, and I do that through the journey world, like Michael was talking about his techniques. I feel like they cannot wait for the next time to have that experience and look forward to it. And I encourage that. Um, I've also, in the last few years, been mentoring therapists to open themselves up more to having the experiences themselves with spirit and connecting to the divine and letting go of that thing that kind of keeps us in our little place. And that has really been very, very good, deep work. It's actually what brought me to this group that you pulled together, was when we talked about it, as we've been friends for a long time, about bringing therapists together that want to be more, bring spirituality into their practices. It was like, yes, this is the place for me to have people where I can talk about that. I could talk about past life as a subject, or talk about the value of energy, or what is divinity, and how do we speak directly with source, because we're taught to not feel worthy. Like, who are we to feel like we could go directly to source? Like, what is that? Um, and so I feel like all of that should be taught and given to others to use for themselves, because what I learned spiritually feels like it should be given away for free. It really, truly does. So I also have discovered that my personal conversations directly with spirit and the things that I'm asking for, and my a way of communicating, brings me exactly the thing that I'm asking for. It's a different kind of manifestation. It's more of an assurity that what I am asking for, help with, guidance, give me the words, show me the path, bring me an opportunity, happens immediately for me. I feel like they know exactly and have been leading me over these 40 years. They've been leading me the whole step of the way and giving me the confidence that I've needed to be really feel comfortable with what work I am doing. I don't have a particular academic strength. I'm not a book writer or any of those kinds of things, but I know how to work with people in a very deep and meaningful way. That is the thing that I am really good at. And so when people come to see me and we begin an intuitive process, they they open up immediately, and it's very easy to be there, to be empathetic, to have compassion, to help them through that moment, in a way that makes them feel good about themselves, that they're releasing the thing that holds them in place. So I'm thrilled that this kind of work is being better received. It's about time, frankly. Um, and I don't have any shame, guilt, or otherwise about it now either. I talk very freely to those therapists and the community and people about what it is that I do. So when a client calls me with a question and we get into a conversation about, well, this is what I am going to present for you, because that I feel like that may be helpful to you. I'm actually in a teaching with them. In addition to sort of saying, I hear you, I'm actually describing a process for them that becomes very intriguing, that they want to have the experience of. And so that's also been something that has kind of led me to where I am. And it's given me personally a lot of healing with my family and a deeper, deeper understanding of, we come back to this place to work through the things that we were never able, perhaps in other lifetimes, to resolve. even with the same characters that we've always been with. When I feel released of it, I know that they are too. And when they are, they bring that to their families and their loved ones. So it's kind of a continuum. And I feel like it's the most open and free that will ever be is when we're inside, not from the outside.
Were you, to step in there, Paulette, and there's just so much richness here in what you're sharing. And when talk about, letting go of your clinical license, was there a moment in time where you just knew that you had outgrown that, or that it was just holding you back to be able to step in? And was there fear that you had to let go of that license and all the clinical work that you had done, and how that you would still utilize that stepping into this more spiritual space?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I know that it happened because I lacked trust that I would be okay. And the minute that I accepted that spirit is guiding this, not me, that I'm not in control of what others think or how I should be, but that I am one with spirit, everything changed. And I felt completely relaxed and open like, yeah, what do I need this license for? I have skills. I'm going to share them, but I'm also bringing my own spirituality to it, and I'm giving that to them because everybody has the capacity to be there to
Yeah,
get that.
absolutely. And I guess I would ask you, Paulette, what tools do you find you are reaching to in drawing those clients to you that have been really life changing? So the trainings that you've had, what are you drawing the most or find the most that you're turning to help in the healing?
It's the guided journeying process.
Can you
It's
explain?
yes, it would be yeah. So you relax somebody, like they would in a meditation. They could get guided meditations on YouTube for free, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And once they have that sense of, okay, nothing bad is going to happen to me if I just let go and I go to my sacred place for information, for healing, for asking questions, for getting guidance, for communicating with spirit, working with ancestors, angels, deities, ascended masters. All of that is right there because it comes to them, not from me, from them. Somewhere in the recesses of our complex brain, for which we only use about 10 or 15%, lies so much possibility for so much more. I started to feel like where it mattered the most to me in making the trust was that I had cancer. I had uterine cancer in 2017. And I absolutely felt I would be cured of this. There would be no further issues or problems. And my husband also had cancer, and I felt the same way. This is going to be the work that we do spiritually to heal ourselves. And we were healed, totally healed, cancer free. So I feel like 50 years from now into the future, we're going to be able to maybe heal ourselves physically, medically, that we'll have the ability to work with our soul and our body at the same time to make those things happen, to teleport ourselves, to telecommunicate with ourselves, to be able to use telepathy in ways that we can't even describe in a single word. So it's very far reaching, but I feel certain it's in every single one of us. And that's really what I reach for.
Yeah, and Paulette, listening to you, and you and I have worked together for such a time, and I've known you, and we've shared this in lifetimes long, in our work together and developing together and walking this path. And I so respect the work that you do, and what you teach me, and you holding space, because as I always like to say, that it takes a village. It takes a village to help one another and offer the tools that we each have. And, as I step into this and I'm listening to you, would someone that would want to come see you is listening to you right now, what level of understanding when we even talk about the word spirit, because somebody listening to this might be like, well, what does that mean? But
Yeah.
somebody wanting to come see you, you know, what levels are you working with? And are you willing to work with where somebody's at in terms of their awareness and their understanding and work towards knowing themselves more? You've also talked about your shamanic journey and how you incorporate that into your work as well. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I feel like that training in particular dealt specifically what shamanism essentially is a healing modality. We actually do psychic surgery and people feel the energy shifting. It's almost like a Reiki experience where you actually feel energy moving through your body and healing you.
Mhm.
And I share that in detail with them, with clients that come to talk to me, so that they know this is what I'm going to be doing. This is what's going to happen here. This is how good. And then we work on it, inputting very positive images of the healed soul. When people ask me, what is spirituality? I say it's the intuitive self in the core of us. It's where, if you have words of source or God or whatever you think of in universal ways, that is what spirit is. That is who we are outside of what we look like. It's the pure essence. And I feel like that pure essence comes through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, so we can continue to grow and enlighten ourselves and help others. We are here to help others
Yeah.
in whatever way we can.
And I found, Paulette, the energy that I know about you, and I will share if I have to refer somebody to you, that you are just somebody that feels like an old friend, somebody that you're just soul recognized. And like myself and like you, Paulette, and let me know if this resonates, you meet people where they're at. You meet
Yeah,
them where they are in their pain and try to approach them to see themselves in a way that is safe and that makes sense. And perhaps you hold space for their curiosities and perhaps open up a door to things that they never thought possible that are possible. So,
yeah.
what I love about the work that you do is really holding space and showing up in exactly what that person may need at that time. So, Paulette, how can the audience find you? And you're welcome to go through me, but how can they find you and how do you work with people? You're in the state of New Hampshire. Go ahead and share a little bit about.
Yes. So I certainly can do remote work for people who live far away. But I'm also in the tri-state area. For certainly anybody could come and find me, and especially with through you, Anne, because I feel such a kinship with you that we've traveled this road together here, the lifetimes that we've spent as committed healers, you know, uh, and what that was really like. Yes, so they can do that. Also, I would be happy to share my information. I don't have a website, and I asked Spirit about that, and I was told you don't need it.
No, you do
You already have it.
not.
Yeah.
You-
You don't need it. You're already there. So yes, I have a email address and phone number, and please feel free to reach out. I would love to answer any questions that people have about spirituality. And would love to hear about their own experiences, their out of body ones, or the times when they healed themselves, or how they're struggling
Yeah,
to
and
find
also,
that
and
inner
also it sounds
place.
like working with other therapists who might be open to this conversation and just simply have
Yeah,
this conversation. So
yeah,
I'll make sure that if anybody wants to reach out to Paulette, you'll contact us through my email, and we'll make sure we forward Paulette's information to you so you can connect with her personally. Paulette,
yeah.
thank you. I'm honored, 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 and grateful, and so humbled by just watching you and the work you've done, and so much I have learned from you and just this path together. So thank you for being here and sharing a bit about what you do and sharing that with others and being a light in this work. It means so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
I want to now introduce our next guest, Steve. Steve, welcome. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Steve. I work in community mental health in Northern New England. I'm still pretty new at this. I have not done intuitive practice professionally yet. I have done it privately. In the clinical side, I work with particularly anger management, assertiveness, self-esteem, and empowerment. And I am a very firm believer in the idea that you build strong relationships with people. And I think that's something that translates therapeutically. I think it translates personally, and I think it translates in the intuitive realm as well. I have been doing this for 8.5 years, and I think about 5 years in, I kind of got a feeling of, well, this is nice, but is this all there is? And it kind of felt like there was something more out there to go after. And it was about at that time that I met Anne, and I had done a couple of intuitive sessions with other folks previously. And Anne said, there may be more for this in you than just simply the therapeutic piece. And so I started exploring it. I had situations in my past where issues would come up, and I would just get this very strong sense that this particular thing was going to happen or that particular thing was going to happen. And lo and behold, they happened. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. And then I started realizing there's a pattern to all of this. And I started listening more to that inner voice, if you will. Clinical therapy is what it is. It can be very, very helpful for people, but there are times when you get stuck. And what I have found in the last couple or 3 years is that on those occasions when I've gotten stuck, I've just kind of sat back and let things come to me, and something totally unrelated to the thread that we were, working on would come to me, and I would offer it up, and almost invariably it would work. Occasionally I would get a response, how'd you know I was thinking that? Well, I didn't, but I just offered it to see how you'd feel about it. And I can see it coming where I'm not going to be doing the therapeutic a whole lot longer. I'm going to step into the intuitive realm. I don't have a specific time frame yet, but it's going to come. And I haven't had any formal training yet. So right now I'm just going with what the spirit leads me to go with. And there are two particular things that come to mind. And I'm kind of channeling Paulette to a certain degree here. The first one is language. That the language that we use both in our teaching and in our listening counts for an awful lot. We talk about voice too, that when you know somebody, you work with somebody for a long time, they develop a voice and you recognize that voice and they recognize your voice as well. And that's something that I intend on building with people as I build the relationships. I pretty much have it in the therapeutic piece now. I'm looking to develop it in the intuitive side. The other one is presence. Right now, I think my strongest gift, and I don't know if it's going to stay that way or if it's going to evolve over time, is that presence. That feeling of having the other person feel comfortable, feel safe in that space. In the therapeutic, we talk about sitting with somebody and allowing them to feel safe in their emotions. And we encourage them to sit with themselves too. But when they're working with me, I want them to feel that safety and that feeling of, regardless of how difficult my situation is, it's going to end up being okay. And there's also a piece about listening that I think we all practice active listening, both in the intuitive and also I've done it in the therapeutic. And I think there's another level to active listening. And I think it basically involves reading, where what you're doing is you're reading the other person as they're speaking. And that for me is a level even above the active listening piece. And that's a skill that I think I have to a certain extent. And I have also started employing this in my personal life, where I spend a lot of time listening to people. And if I'm in a conversation, I'm half a beat behind the conversation because I'm trying to read what I'm hearing, not only for the surface meaning, but for the deeper meaning, and trying to connect with that person. Because every conversation is, if you will, a potential portal into the other person. And it's all about the safety. We all do this because we want to help people. I've had that mission my entire life. I helped run a bowling alley for 26 years. And my job there was simply to help people. And it wasn't just about the bowling. It was about relationships. It was about legal things. It was about medical things. And that has translated into what I do here. As I've noted, I have done some private work with people. I think I'm slowly learning my craft. There is much in the educational side that I have yet to learn. But at the same time, I already trust my spirit. And I trust the spirit of the people that I work with. And for those reasons, I think this is going to work out. I think it's just a question of time.
Yeah, I love the honesty with that. And, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Steve, is if you look back now and being in this clinical space, do you think that your intuition was, your intuition was there, but the clinical work built it and revealed it? Or do you think your clinical work led you into really seeing your intuitive space? So if you look back now, the intuition was always there, the way that you listened or read energy, but maybe through the guise of clinical work was a way to step into it. Or do you feel through stepping into this clinical work that you've been in that you've really honed in and have stepped into this intuitive part of yourself for the first time?
I think that the clinical work has certainly honed my intuitive skills. I think there's always a tension between the two when you are practicing clinically. And it may be that when I'm practicing intuitively, there is still that tension that if I'm practicing intuitively, I don't want to use the clinical skills to any certain degree. If I'm practicing clinically, I kind of have to go up to a certain line in terms of the intuitive, and I can't cross that line. That doesn't mean that I can't take what is given to me and use it to help the person I'm working with. Again, regardless of whether it's clinical, intuitive, whatever, I'm here to help the other person. I'm here to help them learn more about themselves, take what they learn and build for themselves. And as everybody else has talked about, create that healing for themselves. I don't talk a whole lot about healing. I'm not there yet. But if what we do helps them feel more empowered, and that's a subject I'll talk about all day, is empowerment, for me, that's when their healing can begin. So that's kind of the direction I want to go with it. I just will say that more and more of my life is nudging toward the intuitive. And I kind of like that. I feel like I've grown as a person, even though I'm starting to get kind of advanced in years. And the amazing part is I think there's still a whole lot more growth ahead of me. And that for me is exciting.
Have you found, Steve, that the people you have attracted into your life and the people that you find yourself working with, or even in your personal life, has gone more to that internal intuitive space, that you are finding yourself aligning more with people having this conversation? Is it just naturally happening for you? Are you seeking it out, or do you find even the clients or patients that come to you, do you find them, without saying it, really needing more or seeking more without it being spoken?
There are some, and I don't think it takes too awful long to be able to determine who is looking for more than simply the clinical piece, or if it's private, they are looking to learn more about themselves. I think it's very easy to get caught up in the superhighway of life. And I think when we meditate and we do the intuitive piece, that's a way of taking the off ramp. And I don't know that people would frame it that way, but I think when people are looking for the intuitive piece, there are not a lot of such people yet, but I think that's going to grow as time goes on. I think they're going to be looking for that piece that the intuitive part can bring, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to just say, Steve, in working with you in our time together, and you stepping into the Intuitive Therapist Collective here and bringing your voice with this, it's such an important, you bring such an important piece of honesty, and also I think that there can be a parallel of energy as you are stepping into this work, you're also inviting somebody else to step in and to see themselves for the first time, as though you're on this path with them, right?
I think so. I think for an awful lot of people, uh, I don't know that a lot of people have a very strong or nuanced sense of self. And it sure looks to me as if helping them in the intuitive sense can help them with that a lot more so than a clinical piece can.
Sure.
And that for me is very empowering as well.
And I can feel that. I can really, really feel that. And that empowering somebody is really about, at the core of that is healing, right? Like empowering somebody is really, another way of saying, you can walk out of this session and hold on to the healing that was just shared today. Can that be different tomorrow? Sure. But for right now, we hold on to it until there's. Um,
Absolutely. Go now and do for yourself after you've done a session with me or any of you folks that, you know, we've given you the tools. Now it's for you to practice the tools and then come back and talk and we'll see how you've used the tools and let's offer you some more tools.
Yeah.
And now they're intuitive rather than clinical.
Well, and I also want to share one more thing before I ask you to let the audience know where to find you. But I don't know if you have found this, but I have found that as we're hearing somebody go through their journey, there's a lot that I can relate in my own journey, that we are walking the talk. We have been there with them. It's not as though we're removed from their own journey. It just may have showed up differently for us. So I find that there's something very vulnerable, very compassionate, but there's this sense of understanding that we see them because I've felt it, I've been there. I see myself in that, right?
I agree. And I think sometimes we're not aware of the effect that what we offer can have on people, or for that matter, simply the presence that we offer to them may not be about the words. It may simply be about the spirit that you bring to them. And it almost doesn't matter whether it's in person, over Zoom, or even over the phone. I think people innately are more intuitive than they give themselves credit for. And I think a lot of people can pick up on spirits. And that's when you know that you've got somebody who's less afraid to do the work than the average person, I think.
And I think it's somebody like yourself, Steve, that also um, allows someone to go there, to open that door, to look at themselves, to get curious in a safe way. That is just so incredibly important. So I want to thank you for the work you're doing. Now, can you let the audience know how they can contact you or reach you, or a little bit about that?
For now, I think I would ask that they would get in touch with you. You have my contact information. You're welcome to let me know who and where they are, and I will certainly contact them from there. As I've noted, I'm not doing this professionally yet, but I'm on the cusp of doing it. It's not going to be long.
No, and once you do start working, you'll be offering your work remotely.
Yes, that's true. Yep.
I'll make sure anybody who needs to reach out to you, please feel free to contact myself or my assistant, and we'll get you in touch with Steve. Steve, thank you so much for being here and sharing your energy and your journey and a bit about what you have to offer. And again, your light in this world, it means so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Shelby. Hey.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, Shelby. I'm so glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do a bit. Tell us a bit about your work, Shelby.
So my name's Shelby Levesque, and I have a clinical therapeutic practice in Maine, Southern Maine, York, Maine. But I also have a coaching practice. So I do that in person if people want, but they can find me remotely too. So really virtually from anywhere. And I feel like I could probably summarize what I do mostly in the sense that like I feel like the most it's relationships with like it could be their romantic partner, with their coworkers, with their families, with their friends. Um, and probably more most importantly, their relationship with themselves. And that could be a relationship that they have like with their body, with attracting their dreams or hopes, their wishes, like a good financial future, their sense of purpose. But I think that sense of relationship really cultivates what I support people with most. And I've done that through the conduit of both my therapeutic practice and training that I understand in that way. And I'd say, like, in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, I've begun to weave in more spiritual, intuitive work, because I kind of stumbled upon it in my own life. And I don't know, it's almost like once you wake up to it, you can't turn it off. It's like a light switch that you can't turn off. Um, and I kind of feel like I don't know. I feel like years and years ago, you go back like centuries ago, there's an element of like emotions that I almost feel like people have been afraid of. Like mental health was this thing that people turned away from, and you'd honestly get like locked up if you were feeling too much because people didn't know how to deal with it. And now it's become much more widely accepted. And since I've stepped into understanding, listening to what many people would call your spiritual sense, your higher self, universe, God, source, like people use all kinds of different language for it. It just feels like another elevated sense of knowing that once you start trying to educate people about that, that it's another evolution into your higher knowing or inner guidance that um that I think people know is there, but we don't talk about it. And the more that people become aware of it, they're like on the edge of their seat going, "Oh my gosh, I know this." It's like they're reintroduced to like an old friend that they didn't know was already within themselves. And it sort of just feels contagious once you begin talking in a way that's more, um, I guess, intuitive, for lack of a better word. So, so yeah, I guess that's sort of what I do in a sense.
Well, when I want to go back a bit in this kind of awakening for you, in this, the catalyst of something that shifted for you to kind of go more inward. So here you are, doing your clinical practice, and then something shifts within you to step into looking at the energy of relationships, but also probably the relationship that you have to yourself, what
Mm.
things mean, that inner guidance. And so, was there a shift for you, that something bigger than you, or was there an awareness or something that you heard or felt or changed that made you really shift to incorporate this coaching work, which feels a bit more holistic, or that you're really able to step into a much broader space to help people?
Definitely. Back when this sort of started to hit, I was grappling with, honestly, do I have another kid? Do I not have another kid? I don't know. Do I have one? Do I not? Do I have one? Do I not? And I was very much so in my head and using all the tools I had available to me, weighing the pros and cons. Are the finances there? And it's very much so just a cognitive process that anyone would use, talking to everyone outside of myself to make that decision. And that's essentially, I feel like, what so many people are taught is, as we're raised in so many places around the world, most of our homes, our households say, do this thing to make mom happy or dad happy, go to this school because it's going to please somebody else, or check in with your best friend about what they think about this, that, or the other thing. And that's what I did. I was trying to sort of evaluate. I had a strong sense of self, I think, but still the skills that were sort of available to me were talk to people, weigh it all out, weigh your pros and cons. And I came into contact with a friend that I'd been close with for many years, and maybe about I don't know, 4 years into weighing out, do I have another kid or do I not? She said to me, "You need to get quiet." And I was like, stop. um, where is that going to come from? My head races so fast, you wouldn't even, I'm not going to get any answers there. I poo-pooed it and I trashed it and said, thanks, but that's not helpful. But she's very spiritual herself. And I went back to her sort of like frustrated because she does give good advice, probably because she's really connected. And I asked again, and she was like, Shelby, you need to get quiet. And at this point, I'd been wrestling with this decision so much, I was like, fine. And I literally, she said, just put it out there to the universe. Like, what am I supposed to do? And I did. I just sort of got quiet over a period of like weeks, maybe a couple of months. And I asked the question, but I didn't wrestle with the thinking. I just waited for it to sort of come through me. Um, and it was there. It was there faster than anything I could have done by asking other people and recognizing this ability to sort of channel in. The answer was already there within me. It's a connection to something bigger, led me to ask her a lot more questions. And I had already, I think, been in contact with you. Uh, and I had always sort of appreciated psychic ability, intuitive ability, but I sort of felt like it was something that some people had and other people didn't. And that you had, some people were just gifted with it. And I was like, gosh, I wish I had that gift. And I had gone to you for some other things that were going on in life. But it was funny, you would ask me questions and you would say, yeah, I think that it sounds like maybe you're going here. And I realized as you spoke, it was the answer I already knew within me. And it was already there, which led me to think, oh my God, this is something everyone can do. That we can all sort of channel this higher knowing and it's within us. But for the most part, I think it's sort of been drowned out by culturally speaking, it's drowned out by us being taught, raised culturally that listen to your country, listen to your mom, listen to your other people outside of yourself for answers. And my own introspection led me to realize, like, wow, this is crazy when you get quiet and you really listen. Like, how do you channel this? How do you start learning how to like work with this and hone the skill of listening more deeply so that you get clear on those things, which kind of led me down a whole rabbit hole of how to develop that myself, of what is intuition and how do you develop it and get stronger at listening to that own inner knowing so that answers come sort of from within and from a such much more empowered sense of self that it is autonomous. It is, I guess that's sort of what we're coached to do, even as therapists, is to um, empower someone to lead life the way that they want to lead it. And what a more empowering way to do that than find ways to ask people questions to help them channel their own inner guidance. And that just felt, I don't know, beyond exciting to me. And today, I've been doing this for quite a while. I've just found ways through working with you, working with this wonderful, wonderful group here for the last year of intuitive therapists and my own research work, like learning into this. And it's life changing. Like, I feel like everything good has come to me through my life, including that second kid. Um, and just like friends and my work has completely changed. My clients, I just feel like they, every time I have opened this up to them, and they're in varying different places of where they would accept the language or whatnot. But most people resonate with the idea of like, what is that inner knowing? Like, do you have a sense of what feels right to you? And so much of the time they have a sense, but they're doubting it. And all it takes is like, let's just like, fan that flame and ask them how they're feeling about it, because most of the time it is what uplifts them and makes them feel empowered and happy and hopeful, but they doubt it. So I feel like our job is just to help fan the flame of actually what already exists within them. Essentially, what was happening with me was it was channeling and listening to my own inner knowing, but um, there's a quote by Ed Milet that goes something to the effect of, "We are most qualified to help the person we used to be." And I feel like in everything that I've ever done, that it's come through that way. That I first found that inner knowing through my own experience, or anything I've learned really through my own experience. And then that becomes so much easier to teach something that you not only know cognitively speaking, but through your own experience, it's way, way, way more powerful. But my clients love it. I don't know. I think because it's part of who we are, we're bigger than the physical bodies that we're a part of. There's something much more expansive energy wise that we're all connected to. And you can't not know it once you start talking that way.
That Pandora's box opens up. And do
Yeah.
you find yourself incorporating more of that inner guidance and that inner knowing in your clinical sessions, or do you really try to keep it separate, or is it hard to, or do you really just keep that with the coaching, or are you finding yourself more and more wanting to incorporate that into your clinical sessions?
Um, I find it's like always there. It's sort of like um you hear the old saying of like you can't unring a bell. Well, you can't. Once it's part of you, you can't not know it. Some people, I think I always respect where somebody's at, whoever's sitting in front of me, be it coaching or therapy. And I guess to more pointedly answer your question, it's blended. It's not that I suppose my own inner knowing, sometimes when I know someone needs concrete skills that are more therapeutic in nature, that I'll go down that route because that's what I can sense they need. But in that way, I suppose it's my own inner knowing, my own intuition guiding that. And that's a skill that I have that I can support them with. And in terms of helping them to channel that, their own inner knowing, um, I find that there's language, like when therapists learn therapy, there's lots of different models that we learn and of how to practice, how we view people, how we think about a problem, for lack of a better word, and how to support people. And that language is just a set of language versus when you bring in something from a spiritual sense, there's a language that so many people relate to. It's very real in its own energetic sense. Um, but I find so much of the time you can interweave both sets of language to support whoever is sitting in front of you. I don't really feel like it's how would you divide a person like from, I think a lot of people would agree with the idea that our our minds and our bodies are connected, right? That they don't divide. If I said like, let's just cut you off at the neck and only work with your head today, your body is disengaged. You can't do that. Like the people, you think with your body and you're using your body to like help inform your mind. Um, both are interchangeable. So um I think that wherever someone's spirit is, if they're not open to the language at all when it comes to spirituality, then you got to meet them where they're at. And I might use more therapeutic language, but it's sort of guided by my inner knowing that that's where they're at and it should be honored and respected. And sometimes I will weave that language in, and it's funny that, like, do you have sort of a sense of your, like, is there an inner knowing that you just know that this is right? And even that person who's sort of closed off to it is like, totally. I've known that my whole life. But even then, it's part of them. It's just that they haven't found that language yet, which sort of takes me back to my original statement that in my mind, whether I they're ready to hear it or not, I respect where they are. This feels like just a deeper level of awareness that n not all of humanity has come connected with yet. And most of us can accept and acknowledge that like emotions are something that we should address, and but still some people would say that's crap, like I don't talk feelings. Just give me the tools. And the goal is to have someone, I guess, grow to know deeper and deeper parts of themselves so that they could live a happy life. I mean, it's that simple. Does that, I don't know, answer your question? Oh,
Yes, I was on mute. I was going to say, in the container of therapy is such a beautiful place to start because where there's trauma, there is healing to be done. And through that healing, we start to, and can we only start to really see ourselves. And so there's that opportunity to get in there to perhaps show a different way, show the person themselves. Like only through that, isn't it interesting? Like through the trauma is where we can be open to maybe discovering that intuitive guidance and that inner guidance for the first time.
mm,
Such a place of pain that that pain is the only light switch that will really allow that to turn on. And what a, you know, what a beautiful space in that therapeutic space that we have that is we're able to go there. So that's why this group is so powerful. And so I have such hold respect for it because you are in that position to not only help in you know, the practices that you have, but now it's calling you to go deeper. Because I can imagine as you're working with somebody over time, you really do start to see them. And you know, how can you change that model? And I think it's that theme for all of you about what does healing truly mean, and to fully truly heal, or at least heal this, right? Can we
mhm.
do this? So Shelby, um, as I'm listening to the work that you're doing, the incredible work you're doing, and stepping into this coaching, how has the coaching piece fit in with the clinical work? And do you find people who come in for clinical work would then go into coaching, or do you find that they're two different people that really either are drawn to one or the other?
So they're really similar to one another. And I don't, there's, to me, like, there's limitations with both, like that I am licensed in the state of Maine. And so as a therapist, I can really only practice therapy in the state of Maine. With regard to therapy, like if you really, it's important to you to get a diagnosis for something, then you need to see a therapist or a clinical professional who can give you a diagnosis. Um, and is as far as coaching goes, like that is a limitation. You can't diagnose as a coach, but what you can do is see people from anywhere. I don't have to, you know, just be in the state of Maine to be a coach. Um, and can you expand on the question a little bit, like just as far as which one that people would want? Did I get that right?
Well, you did, and you're explaining that, but I guess I would say if somebody was going to come and work with you, Shelby, why would somebody come in and see you therapeutically versus coaching?
I think that there's a lot of overlap, honestly. Because what I usually explain to people is sort of like you can't take me out of me. And I've got a lot of knowledge in different areas. And if it's more like deep rooted, I guess like trauma work that you're really needing like a diagnosis for, or you need to be getting like some specific skills, for me at least, to be able to manage that, I would probably feel more comfortable working in a therapeutic setting under that. Whereas I feel like with the coaching, I think of it as, and I can bring the intuitive sense in there too, because of course, I think intuitively speaking, like everybody has it. It's trying to draw the deepest part of you from within out. So it's going to be there in a therapeutic setting too. Um, and when it comes to the coaching, I still use so much of who I am, and so much of who I am is what I've learned as a therapist. So that education is going to come through in coaching anyways. But that piece may be left behind because I legally can't diagnose somebody as a coach, but I still bring through all of the teachings and the tools and the questions and the guidance that I would use. Like you still get me. In the coaching. So I guess does that sort of answer your question?
That doesn't. It sounds like it's more of this guidance, and you actually are able to be a bit more expansive with
Mhm.
coaching.
I
And
think so.
yeah, that's what it sounds like. So somebody looking for one or the other in that coaching piece might really attract somebody who is really wanting to, explore and have a little bit more freedom in
Hmm.
they're needing, and maybe not necessarily looking at a diagnosis, but they're looking at um, seeking more of themselves and having that internal dialogue and having a safe space to do that with somebody. So
Hmm.
Shelby, tell the audience a bit about, I think you said a little bit, but just to be very clear, how they can find you and the best way to reach out to you.
Thank you. So my website is www.connectionsrising.com. And people can also find me, I haven't posted in a little while, but on TikTok and on Instagram at Connections Rising in both places.
Fantastic. And they can book
Yeah.
therapeutic appointments there and also coaching.
So that's I apologize. That's a coaching. You can always reach out there and ask me about therapy. I'll just redirect you to the therapy practice. It's just easier to find me there. But I have a Psychology Today profile, and people can find me there just under my name. It's Shelby Levesque. So my name Shelby Levesque Levesque. But that is again just in Maine, that I would be able to offer therapy services.
Your licenses in the state of Maine, and you work in person and remote for the state of Maine.
In person and remote in the state of Maine for therapy. And if you're in Maine, I can do coaching in person. But if you're far away, you probably aren't gonna fly, fly too far to go do those things. I can offer coaching virtually
Okay.
anywhere.
Coaching is virtual, so they can be in person, but you can work with anybody wherever they are.
Yep. Yep.
Fantastic. Super.
Yeah.
Super. Shelby, it's been an honor for me to work with you and to watch your path and to talk as colleagues and to have you contribute to the space. It means so much. And to know that we're neighbors in the same town and, working towards the same thing of helping people. And it just means a lot, right? It's really special.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
I'm grateful for you. And again, your light that's here for others to be there because, as I said, it takes a village. So thank you for being here and being a part of this group and sharing a bit about who you are.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for being here today. We have others in this group that couldn't join us today. And I want to honor all of them that we have worked with in the last year of this Intuitive Therapist Collective. And, we understand that healing isn't linear, right? And it requires a holistic way of approaching things. And, isn't there that saying, like, if we know better, we do better? And I think we can live by that by learning from ourselves and learning from those that we work with and really just redefining how we heal. Not only ourselves, but the people that we work with. And I want to thank each of you for stepping into this space, for having a voice, for being a light for others, and being a part of this network because it really matters. And just sharing a bit about who each of you are and what you do. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to connecting with each of you again very soon.